Supports, you either love them or you hate them. I think we can all agree the work that goes into making each hero deserves recognition, so join me as we go through the timeline of each support character from start to finish and figure out why I'm not getting any healing even though I'm right in front of it. Like most heroes, Ana started out as a prototype, this time being called the Alchemist. They started work on this Alchemist character right before the game shipped out. They had a full 21 hero roster and wanted to gauge what heroes the community wanted next. Coming to the conclusion that the game needed another healer, a mechanic they wanted to explore was actually having to aim with your heals. Lucio has a healing aura, Mercy's heal is a beam that you don't have to aim, and Zenyatta applies a harmony orb that tracks players within its LOS. The syringe gun that Ana has now is always a staple of the Alchemist prototype. One of their abilities would have had them drink a potion that would make them jump really high and fast for about 1 or 2 seconds. Another idea was a potion that would heal over a long period of time, and it sounds like the heal would last a while too, with their idea that you would drink it, walk into a fight and tank a bunch of damage because you'd constantly be healing the entire time. The devs had this Alchemist concept but didn't quite know what they wanted it to really be yet in terms of character and backstory. So they looked through the characters in the lore and found that Ana Amari might be a good fit to integrate with the Alchemist kit. Design wise, Ana was initially meant to wear a hazmat suit with a bunch of vials and tubes to the point where she almost felt like Bane in terms of how she looked. After revising the design, the team went for an apocalyptic wasteland survivor look. Even though this didn't end up as her final default skin, it is what directly inspired her wasteland legendary, vials and all. Baptiste was based on a prototype internally called Gadget. In the Overwatch scene, his immortality field is usually called Lamp, which is funny because originally it was supposed to be a literal lamp. It worked more closely to how Orisa's javelin worked, where you would throw it at the ground or wall, but devs quickly figured out that throwing it at weird angles would make it really difficult to counter, and the lamp would cap you at 1 health instead of how it currently is, where it caps at 20% of your base HP. Bap's amplification matrix was intended to be the size that it is now, with Jeff Goodman saying that a bigger window size would have just been too overpowered. The triangular spot on his chest was originally meant to act as the activation for his regenerative burst. He would jab something into it and the ability would heal everybody around him. The devs felt like it didn't really make sense though, because why would something he's injecting into himself heal everybody else? So they opted for a simpler animation. He originally had 2 guns, 1 grenade launching healing weapon, and a regular damage dealing SMG that he could swap between. After merging the 2 guns, they had a concept where his reload would have been different depending on what type of ammo he was missing. If he ran out of his healing grenades, he would only reload those. If he ran out of bullets, he would also only reload his bullets. If he was missing both, it would have combined the animations, making it longer. Brigitte was already introduced to the lore of Overwatch in 2016 in the Dragon Slayer digital comic. Originally named Pally, she was developed alongside Moira. She had an ability to send out a healing orb to her teammates that had a really long cooldown. After fleshing out the characters, the devs pushed Pally into a more hybrid tank playstyle and gave the healing orb to Moira instead. A hero with a spear and shield charge was in development at one point, and the shield charge would eventually be integrated into Brigitte's kit. Her design was inspired by the Paladin archetype, originally with a sun crest on her shield instead of a lion, and this concept was implemented into a skin instead. The shield and flail combo was previously a concept of Reinhardt with the Wildebeest prototype, and the Titan hero Troy seems to have inspired Brig's kit with the flail, charge, and shield. Internally named Solar, Illari started from a desire to have a sun-themed hero on the roster. One of the earliest prototypes had her throw a grenade-like stun orb that would explode and blind enemies within its AoE. They added VFX of her throwing the ability and blinding enemies, but they moved away from it because there wasn't a noticeable impact when using it, and the enemy felt too much impact. A full screen blind ability was way too much in the context of Overwatch, so it ended up being scrapped. Solar's ultimate went through a number of iterations. One of the first ones would automatically target enemies and apply a debuff called Solar Flare, which could hit up to 5 people. They would do damage, reveal their location, and increase damage taken. The ult was cool to play with, but again, it just wasn't that fun to play against. The amount of debuffs plus increased damage was way too chaotic, and overall very frustrating for the enemy. Using the same idea, another version was made where the debuff would only apply when an enemy was hit within the area of effect, and it would also heal teammates if they were in it. Her healing also went through a few prototypes. One was a deployable drone that, once thrown, would hover above and heal them. While they were tweaking this ability, one version would heal more depending on how low they were, another would have a burst heal effect within its first second of deployment, and a version where it would automatically track and follow allies. The devs wanted a more strategic ability that allowed the player to focus more on using her solar rifle, so a turret similar to Torbjorn and Symmetra were looked at for inspiration. This turned into Illari having her solar rifle use a healing beam as her primary fire, while her alternate fire was a burst heal that could pierce through allies with a long cooldown. This was changed because the devs wanted to encourage players to support through damage instead of just being a heal bot, so her current primary and secondary weapon abilities were settled on. Development on Juno started in early 2023, stemming from the idea of a hero fighter pilot with lock-on missiles. The devs knew they wanted another support, so they workshopped a Space Ranger style character that initially piloted a mech suit. Before they even knew what her kit was going to be, they revealed the unnamed hero alongside Venture in their gameplay demo. Taking a hero select space between Moira and Zenyatta, Juno initially had a lot more pieces of armor attached to her suit, being removed due to silhouette reasons. During Season 11's mid-season patch, a Lucio interstellar space pod was added into Dorado's first point attacker spawn. When you get near the pod, you can hear Morse code, which reads, "J has landed," attempting transmission to RPT, awaiting response. Outside is the Lucio logo on a red circle with the words Project Red Promise, which hints towards our origin as a human born on Mars. In line with this teaser, there was a comet that was seen flying across the maps Hollywood, Blizzard World, and Route 66. We can track her trajectory from Mars, going from the west coast of the United States, eventually ending up in Dorado, Mexico. Following this teaser and the release of Juno, the crashed space pod in Dorado was substituted for a commemorative statue celebrating Juno's landing on Earth. It reads, "In commemoration of Juno's landing, this monument marks the site of a historic moment in our humble Dorado. Juno Teo-min, the first human born on Mars, crashed to Earth in this same place. The landing marked the end of her brave journey from Mars and led her to take her first steps into a new world. The town of Dorado hopes that Juno can enjoy our world as if it were her own." In the end, Juno's spaceship was relocated to Watchpoint Gibraltar, where it still sits today. For about 4 years prior to the release of Overwatch 2, Kiriko underwent numerous designs, originating from concept art that was meant as an enemy for the scrap PvE mode. They drew up a whole bunch of ninja enemy units, and one would use a big fidget spinner throwing star, and had a more traditional ninja costume. The team experimented with a couple of different weapons and ways to heal her team. At one point she would have used a healing shotgun, and maybe even a staff similar to Ramatra's. Early on, they saw Kiriko as a trickster hero, so they wanted to include smoke bombs and a ninja shadow clone ability. While the shadow clone ability idea was still used with her teleport, as well as her stadium power clone configuration, the smoke bomb was ultimately scrapped due to the game becoming a Valorant simulator with way too many smokes on screen. And in December of 2020, Blizzard announced the deathmatch map Kinozaka, along with a correspondence written by Asa Yamagami. This was written to her husband Toshiro, who has seemingly been kidnapped. The letter talks about how the Hashimoto clan have negatively affected Kinozaka, and also mentions their daughter receiving blades as a gift from Toshiro. In the release date trailer for Overwatch 2 in 2022, a fox is seen running around on Kinozaka, and when the second beta for Overwatch 2 ended, a cryptic message was displayed that, when decoded from the base 64 format, reads, "What does the fox say?" This led to rumors of a fox girl character named Kimiko, and the Overwatch streamer Wanted actually did an oopsie and revealed that her name was most likely Kiriko and not Kirito or Kimiko.
Is there gonna be a character you're gonna main instead of cast? Dude, I was thinking about Kirito. Like from Sword Art Online.
Shortly after this, an unfinished cinematic of Kiriko was released, pretty much confirming that these leaks were at least partially true and that Kiriko would be the next support hero. Early concepts for Lifeweaver had him as an older physician who drew healing energy into his hands and blasted it into his allies, kind of like Moira's Coalescence. Tree of Life went through a couple changes, a healing Earth Shatter-like ability which turned out to not be as useful as they thought, kind of like Tree of Life now. A healing totem was also tested, but just didn't really feel right for the hero. When developing Overwatch, the team wanted to add a bard character who could cast ability of boosting auras to the team. Since Lucio is from Brazil, they settled on his blue, yellow, and green color scheme. Early on, they wanted to add turntables extending from his hips that he could manipulate during gameplay, while the panthers acted as equalizers. They were removed later on during development, but they would appear again later on his equalizer skin. The artist revised his appearance, making a look that they were mostly satisfied with, but some felt it made him look too civilian, so they added more equipment to make him more heroic and distinct. His design and gameplay also looks like it took some inspiration from Jet Set Radio, with the skates and particularly the way he wall rides and how he's constantly in motion like the idle animations. Lucio's beat drop was actually the third iteration of his ultimate. The first one was a time stop effect. Casting the ability, everyone on the map was slowed down to roughly 5% of their normal speed. Internally called tempo shift, the ultimate slowed pretty much everything. Even projectiles would come to almost a complete stop, with Lucio moving around at a normal speed. This let him skate around the map, boop enemies, and even boop projectiles away from his team. If Zarya used her Graviton Surge, Lucio could have used his own ult and booped it into the enemy team. Another version of his ultimate would have boosted friendly ult meters, but this was also scrapped pretty early on. Mercy was based on the Titan class Guardian, with the abilities Resurrect and Salvation. When pitching Overwatch, Guardian was changed to a character named Angelica. Heal Beam and Resurrect were still a part of their kit, and Teleport was an added ability that seems to to have been a precursor to her guardian angel. At this point, damage boost wasn't a part of her kit, and looks to have been taken from another unreleased hero, Rashi, who had a damage beam ability. With Overwatch in full swing, her teleport ability was removed and replaced with guardian angel. Her staff initially had an ammo capacity of 30, and Resurrect would revive players with half health while the rest would regenerate over time. Her early ultimate would allow Mercy to heal and damage boost multiple people while consuming fuel. Her design also saw pretty drastic changes, like an African American character with a pretty similar outfit to her Titan iteration, as well as outfits more closely resembling a regular surgeon. Early concepts had her look a lot more similar to Pharah, with a bigger gun and wings that would help her fly around. Mercy's weapon and staff were originally one and the same, a staff that would transform into a gun. We can see how this would have worked in the concept art, but they thought it would be too bulky and unwieldy for Mercy's character. Initial ideas for Moira gravitated towards a more mysterious and androgynous character with 4 mechanical tentacles. These proved to be kind of difficult to actually incorporate into gameplay, so they shifted to a more conventional two-handed spray cannon. They incorporated a lot of tools and canisters into her design, but thought that her silhouette was too similar to Zarya. Different costumes and weapons were tested out with clawed gloves and gauntlets, as well as a concept inspired by Omniblade. This introduced the idea of having her do damage with one hand and heal with the other. All of these concepts were put together in order to create her final design, incorporating a color-changing liquid to differentiate her healing and damage abilities. Her gameplay initially used a large health pool that she would spend as a resource to heal while draining health from enemies. The original version of her ultimate was a transformation where biotic energy swirled around her and gave her a beam that could heal and do damage. They decided to ditch the transformation and just give her the beam instead. Zenyatta began as a concept for a cyber monk, preceding the Omnics entirely. Early drafts portrayed him as very physically powerful, but they revised this to make him fit the enlightened sage archetype. Early designs gave him multiple physical arms, which weren't used in his regular form, but were given to him in his ultimate as holographic arms. The orbs he uses to heal and do damage with were originally the ones that surrounded him, but this led to complications with reloading them, so they just changed them to look like bursts of energy.